We were hitchhiking through Europe with my then boyfriend, and on our way back home, a truck driver picked us up. We had had a few weird encounters on our trip before, but we were on the road for about a month, and nothing really scary happened until we met this guy. He was a young guy, about 25, quite regular, spoke English okay, long time away from home. I was a bit younger with my boyfriend being around his age. My boyfriend was tired, so he took a seat on the bed in the truck and wasn't really trying to hold a conversation. During our trip, we switched turns as I usually do when I hitchhike with someone. One person talks with the driver and the other relaxes in the back. So I was in the passenger seat. I think he was even dozing off a little bit, and the driver started complimenting me and asking me about my boyfriend. It was still fine, nothing too weird, and I was just trying to talk about something to be a good company. As we moved on, I started to feel a bit uncomfortable, but didn't let anything on, and only told my boyfriend that we should find truck drivers from our country to make the last part of our trip in one go. I translated to English immediately because the truck driver became agitated and suspicious of what I was saying, and I explained that we are really tired and our plan is to find our truck drivers before he has to take the long break so that we can go on traveling without interruption. We stopped for a short break at a gas station, and my boyfriend decided he was going to look for another truck driver in the parking lot and left me with this guy alone. The truck driver came on to me real hard, and I was scared shitless and didn't fight back. I could feel how aroused he was, and there was no doubt of his intentions. Luckily, my boyfriend was away for just a minute. At that moment, I realized we need to get out of this situation fast. I didn't want to say anything to my boyfriend because I was scared of how he would react, so I decided to pretend nothing had happened. I was determined to get out at the next stop. We reached a large gas station for truck drivers only and told our driver we were going to go look for other drivers that were heading our way. In between, on our way to this station, this guy got in touch with another driver, saying he could also take us, maybe one at a time. Damn, I thought. Now he's planning a threesome. When I was finally alone with my boyfriend, I remained calm and just hinted at what had happened and insisted that we are not staying with this driver no matter what. It took us about 5 minutes to find a group of truck drivers from our country. They were having beers and cracking jokes, and 2 of us agreed to take us. I jumped with joy. We went back to the truck to get our things. The guy had already brought his friend along and was offering my boyfriend to take a shower at the gas station. He was going to pay for him. For no obvious reason, he was quite persistent, and, as I very well remember, he never offered it to me. Needless to say, these 2 guys were very disappointed to see us go. I still remember how they were looking at me when I was taking our backpacks from the truck. I have never told my ex-boyfriend the details. I was just lucky that we were away from that truck driver, and I think he has never realized how bad the situation was at that time. I was playing it cool the whole time, but inside I was shaking. I could see how desperate that truck driver was, and how much he wanted to get rid of my boyfriend. I was so angry at myself for staying with him in the truck by myself, but then all of our things were there, and angry for not fighting him back, but it was so sudden and I got really scared. I am a male, and this happened when I was around 23. Before I start, I need to provide a little backstory. I grew up in a very sheltered life, usually only leaving the house for grocery runs and doctor appointments. I didn't even go to school, and my mother decided it was best to homeschool me. I was, and still am, very socially awkward as a result of my upbringing, though I'm getting better. One thing I did leave the house for as a child was to compete in talent competitions. I was a pianist. I still am, though a little rusty. I had a newspaper article published for me once to advertise a fundraising concert I was holding at my local church. I needed funds to go to a competition 1,500 miles away. In the article, the journalist recorded a quote from me. She had asked what I thought of my talent, and being a child in a Christian house, I replied, "It's not my talent, God let me borrow it." Fast forward till I became an adult. I was eager to leave the house and to get out on my own. I decided to get my commercial driver's license so I could get out and see as much of the world as I could. Besides driving long hours and the occasional night of having trouble finding a halfway decent place to park at the end of the day, I enjoyed it. One night I was pulling into a truck stop to park for the night. As I was taking my dog out to do his business, I passed by the truck next to mine. It had its driver's side window down, and the driver was sitting in the driver's seat. He called out to me as I passed him, complimenting that he liked my dog, and asked if he was friendly. I thanked him and informed him that my dog was shy of strangers. Being that I sat in a truck all day with no human interaction, besides the occasional honk and guy flipping me off for being slow, I longed for conversation, and I told him I would be right back. A few minutes later, after putting my dog in my truck, I walked over to talk to my parking spot neighbor. We chatted for a while, him in his chair and I standing on the top step of the side of his truck. After about 20 minutes, he asked me if I noticed that his arm had bumped mine 7 times. My arm was on top of his armrest as I clung to the side of his truck. This surprised me. I had not noticed it at all. Thinking back on it, I believe he was testing to see how situationally aware I was. I told him I had not noticed. It was cold outside, considering it was the middle of winter, so he invited me to sit in his truck to continue our conversation. This is where I should have had alarm bells ringing in my head, but growing up so sheltered, I was too trusting of people. We continued to talk, though the conversation started crossing lines, asking questions that were too personal. He was asking me stuff like, "What's your phone number? Who are your parents? What were your grandparents' full names? Where do you live?" etc. Regretfully, I answered him. However, I had the sense to at least not give him my address. We had also swapped seats during the conversation. First, he had moved to the passenger seat so I could sit in the driver's seat, but then we swapped to where I was in the passenger seat and he was in the driver's seat. The conversation started to take a weird and creepy turn. After all those questions, he asked, "Did you notice that my eyes don't have any color?" His irises were black. Just 2 black orbs surrounded by the white of his eyes. I later looked this up on Google. There is apparently a rare condition that causes someone's eyes to be so dark brown that they appear black. This is where I started to feel very uneasy. He started talking about my childhood, and this is when he said something that disturbed me the most. He asked, "Didn't you have a talent as a kid?" I said yes, and that I played the piano. He replied, "Wouldn't that be a lie since you only borrowed it?" I had not mentioned to him anything about that article, and the city it was from was too small to be noticed by someone who lived so far away. I was ready to get out of there. I was trying to think of how to excuse myself without rousing suspicion. He started trying to convince me to ride with him to his next delivery and to just leave my truck where it was, that he would bring me back the next day. I declined. He then asked if I would come to visit him at his home, and again I declined. It had been several hours, so I decided to tell him I needed to take my dog out to do his business again, so he didn't go in my truck. I exited his truck and took my dog out again. But this time when my dog was done, I went back in my truck and locked the doors. I also tilted both seats forward so it would be difficult for him if he entered my truck, buying me time if needed. The next morning, he was gone. I continued on my day, relieved that I was away from him. A few hours later, he called me. "So why did you tilt your seats forward last night?" I told him it was to keep my dog from jumping on them. He continued to talk to me, though I kept my answers short this time. I blocked his number after he hung up and later decided to change my phone number. I know I was lucky that it didn't go further than a creepy conversation. I'm more careful now about who I talk to and where I am. Be careful, everyone. Never get into a stranger's vehicle, no matter how friendly and innocent they seem. I've learned my lesson. My name is Will, and this happened in 2016. I was a trucker, crisscrossing the highways of America, chasing that white line down the road. Those long, lonely nights on the road were part of the job. I had heard my fair share of trucker tales, and I never paid them much mind. That was until that fateful night in 2016. The sky was shrouded in darkness, heavy clouds blotting out the moon and stars. My rig's headlamps cut through the night, and the only sound was the hum of my engine and the crackling of the radio. The desolate highways stretched out before me, winding through a dense, foreboding forest. I had been driving for hours, and exhaustion was starting to set in. My eyelids grew heavy as the endless road hypnotized me. That's when I saw it. A faint glimmer in the distance. Another truck, parked on the shoulder with its driver's side door ajar. It seemed abandoned, and an unsettling feeling washed over me. I couldn't resist the urge to pull over and investigate. As I stepped down from my cab, the cold night air bit through my clothes. The eerie silence of the woods pressed in around me. The abandoned truck's interior was unnaturally cold, and its engine had only recently been running. I peered inside and spotted a tattered journal on the passenger seat. Its pages were filled with cryptic symbols and strange writings that made no sense to me. But it was the final page that sent a chill down my spine. In hastily scrawled words it read, "They're watching." A whispering wind seemed to carry voices from the surrounding woods, the trees coming to life in the darkness. Panic surged within me, and I rushed back to my own truck, clutching the journal tightly in my trembling hand. With trembling fingers, I roared away from the abandoned truck, my eyes locked on the road ahead. The radio remained silent, and the world outside was nothing but a curtain of impenetrable black. It was as though I'd left the nightmare behind, but my respite was short-lived. Pulling into a truck stop, I realized I was alone. The place was empty, its lights flickering eerily. My heart pounded as I parked my rig, and the radio crackled back to life. A voice, desperate and hushed, seeped from the speakers. "Run, Will. They know you've seen it. They're out there, and they won't let you leave." A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, clutching the same journal. Fear gripped me as I recognized the symbol-covered pages. Before I could react, the figure was consumed by the trees themselves, pulled into the abyss. With a surge of adrenaline, I shifted my rig into gear, leaving the abandoned truck stop far behind. The highway stretched endlessly before me, and though the weight of the unknown pressed upon my soul, I vowed never to venture down those cursed roads again. The secrets of the forest remained locked in silence, and I was determined to leave them that way.